Hello everybody, hola community, welcome to Blender.Today live number 76. Another week is the last one before the feature freeze, and apparently the developers know about it because they filled this episode like 1 hour before the live stream went on. There were like new features going on, so yes, I have to cram so many improvements this week. So let me show you a little bit of how the list of things that I have here to show you. This is the list. It goes all the way down here. So let's get ready. How are ya? How's everybody here? Is it all good? Yes, saludos everyone. Nice. Music slightly loud. I can put it down. And sorry about the delay. There were some things. YouTube is changing things how we do live streams here, so it's getting a bit gotta keep up with the updates. Blender updates, that's what we're gonna see this week. So before that, I have one announcement to show besides the typical. Remember that this is live. We are live streaming live from Blender Animation Studios headquarters here in Amsterdam. Is 5 p.m. and you can ask questions. We're gonna answer them towards the end of the show. This is also a Q&A, so it's a bit of sharing the news, the updates of Blender, and the Q&A. The questions for this are already popping up in Blender.Today. Here you can find the thread. There's already 65 comments, so no. Don't wait too long before asking the questions. Remember, you can also vote, give it a heart to the questions that are gonna pop on the top, so that way means that more people are interested in knowing. So I'm gonna try answer those first. So first, actually I want to talk about a job offer, which is always good news to share that the Blender you can get a job doing Blender stuff. So in the jobs board here in Blender.community, which if you didn't know, it has a jobs board. Yes, it used to be on the Blender network. Now we move it to the jobs board. The website is being hacked to death apparently because it's very slow. I hope I didn't mess up my chance to load the questions, but if everything is okay, you're gonna find the new jobs. It's I'm gonna leave it loading for a bit now because it's about the junior animator in Rome. You're gonna find it there. I don't have the details and the website is still loading. So if you live in Rome or nearby and want to be a junior animator at working Blender stuff, go there when the website loads. But now it's time to move to the actual Blender features we have this week. Still music too loud? Okay, no music allowed. There's okay there. Let's get to the features, because this week there is an improvement on a whole new, or a refresh in the interface of the file browser. Then there is improvements in the user interface. There is edit mesh sculpting, new features. There are new brushes. There are like 3-4 new brushes or 5. Some tools also in the sculpting. There is viewport, workbench, Eevee, cycles, yes, grease pencil, sequencer, rigging, IO like GLTF also got some improvements. The API, depth graph, and even the DNA is getting some improvements, but that's for the future. And there is also some things that don't even fit there. So let me get to it. The first one, the most obvious one, the one that you're gonna notice as soon as you open Blender and open a file or save a file, you're gonna find out that now the file browser opens. It looks much more, it looks different. Let's see if I can make my UI a bit bigger so you can see it. Something like that. The file browser, the one that you use for saving files, for opening an image, for opening fonts, we use it all the time, and it's been a bit outdated. In the Blender, it's the same pretty much since always. There have been some new improvements, but basically now the file browser first of all opens in a new window. So it opens in a better or easier to find not better, easier to find, but it's more like if it opens in a temporary window. So it means that it's gonna stay open, you do your stuff, and then it closes without changing what you were working on. For example, it was very annoying that when you were like doing a render on cycles in the viewport, and then you want to add a texture, so the file browser will take the whole screen, and you're gonna you lost your, when it goes back to the viewport, you would lose your precious samples calculated by cycles. So that's one of the benefits. The other benefits is that now, for example, the listing of the here, grease pencil, I missed the button to go back up. I've been discussing with the developers how to make it better, but that's the one thing that I miss from this new file browser, is a one way to go up with the mouse without having to click in this arrow up here. So it has many great things. It's just the one thing that bothers me. But the rest, for example, if you want to sort things by name, you can just click there in the column. Also for sorting by date and sorting by size. It's much more natural. Before you have to like click on one of the icons. I always forgot which one was what. You can still do that in the popover here in the top right. Vertical list, horizontal, thumbnails. Thumbnails are now much nicer. Look at this folder icon. It doesn't look like a pipe anymore, like a J or something, like a pipe anymore. Now this one looks more like a folder, and once you are there, you're gonna see that the thumbnails now have if it's a blend file, has a little icon here, and it has an outline. It used to have like a shadow, and it wasn't really like the shadow looked a bit weird. It didn't really give you any hint. Now it has this outline around it, which makes it a bit more easy, especially when you easy to see, especially when you have textures that have like a transparency. It's good to see where are the bounds of that image. So this file browser is a joint effort. It's a community effort. It's from all parts of the community, all the kind of developers. There is William Reinisch, who contributed to the first design round. Julian Eisel worked on the actual implementation. Then Harley helped out with, for example, the outline of the thumbnails, and the icons also are coming from our awesome designer Andres. So thank you everyone for that contributed this one. There is also to this project there is a thread where you can see the planned changes that are for this file browser, because there are many things that are still being added every day. The big thing was the whole editor pretty much, but now there is the whole other side, which is like linking, appending. You can also browse, for example, if you are appending, you want to append from file, and you see it as a thumbnail, you can actually have the nice little icons here, like to see where, okay, it's an action, it's a brush, and it all looks so neat now. For example, when you're saving files, you also have these, for example, here in the naming, in the field for the name, you can increase and decrease. These features were already in 2.7. This one allows you to increase the numbering, which you can also do by pressing plus and minus, or Control plus to add 100 to the name of the file, or Shift up to add 10, every 10 numbers to the name of your file. And this option now is available here in the field, and this is it was there, like functionality was there before, but now the cool thing is that all the text fields can have all these widgets can have an extra buttons, so they look much nicer, they look a bit more as part of the widget, and it can be used by anyone. So it's a nice improvement to the actual layout engine. All right, moving on, let's continue. And also there is support for zip files now, and they will show like a specific icon. I think we should add also support for 7z and tar and rar and all the other ones. All right, more interface. We always try to tackle the interface, the changes that are more obvious to the user first, just to avoid any confusion. There was a bug report about the the buttons for navigation being on the right instead of up here on the left. There was an actual bug report, but it was an actual change designed, and it was proposed by Willem to declutter a little bit the top right side of the editor of the 3D view, because there were navigation buttons plus tool buttons plus shading / overlay buttons in the same area, which is far from ideal, especially because I personally always had trouble, like when clicking on the overlay, on the gizmos, the shading, there were these buttons up here. The first change is to move them to the right, just to pile them up. The second change that is proposed, that Harley made a mock-up already, is to unify all these buttons into one row of buttons, so like a one long block, so it looks a bit less like little spheres in there. I think that's gonna be nice. We still have to see how that's gonna work with how it's gonna look, but I think it's gonna make it nicer. Then another improvement or change, actually more like a change. The select tool is now called tweak. Because it not only selects like all the other tools select, but it actually is the tweak when you click and drag besides selecting, because selecting is also available in other tools. So it's not like only a tool for selection, but it's for tweaking. When you tweak the position, you click and drag, and you basically are adjusting the position. And it's also more industry standard because other softwares also use that naming. Then tiny one, these properties tabs, they used to have the word context in them, and it was a bit confusing because it was context render and then render properties. Now it just says it doesn't have context anymore, so it's a bit more clear. Then a shout out to a developer, Eric developer. I always try to give shout outs nowadays, because every week we at least have 1, 2, or even 3 new names, not new developers, but new names in the Blender community, because maybe they are developers for many years, but they're new to contributing to the Blender code. So in this case, Eric Abrahamson, is that Icelandic? I hope so, because that would make per capita Iceland the highest number of developers, right? In this case, he made a change, so some values, some sliders in the interface had a bit too many, like the precision was a bit too low, so you will move a little bit and you will change too many values, like values too high, and in too high of a jump, so it wouldn't be very precise. So he went ahead and tweaked all these little values here and went through the trouble of choosing nice, more sensible values to make it easier. So thank you very much. And there's a whole bunch of new icons regarding in the UI. It's just the last topic, but Andres Ambros also been working on icons for the folders, for drives, for snapping, checkmark, transform origins, and so much more. So thank you, Andres. Let's move on. There is edit mesh. Okay, let's start the edit mesh. Then I'm gonna talk about sculpting and then the viewport. So organized this week. And I also had some tea in a Blender flavored mug, which I think you can get at the Blender store, by the way. Oh, and these t-shirts, we also are planning to make them and send them to the Blender store, so you can get them soonish. In this color, I think it's going to be slightly less bright, so you can actually use it outdoors without people like turning heads to see you. More on that soon. Edit mesh. Select interior faces now detects the region. So there was actually a bug report that evolved into a feature, fixing the feature really. So the bug report was about the selection of the interior faces was completely wrong. Sometimes it was selecting faces when it shouldn't, and when it shouldn't do something more like this, you know, selecting the actual faces that are inside of the mesh. Campbell went ahead and made a fix for it, and now it's there. It basically takes into account the surrounder and the non-manifold edges. So nice one. A bug fix or bug report that becomes a feature or a fix. So nice one. All right, time for sculpting. Pablo Navarro, our Spanish hero that is giving so much love to the sculpting workflow and painting workflow in Blender, so needed. He's been migrating some of the features from his sculpt branch into master, which means they're gonna be in 2.81. In the last hour, yeah, okay, these tools were before on the branch, so it's not that he made it in 1 hour. Probably he did, but now there's also some more tweaking involved. But in the last hour, he's been committing and pushing these changes into master. So if you have downloaded the build today or yesterday, probably it's not there. You gotta wait until tonight or tomorrow morning, depending on when you're watching this. So Tuesday, basically. So draw sharp brush. This tools is very nice. So here, let's see. Let's see the video. It was added a few hours ago, so it's not fair. I didn't have time to actually do a test, but he's awesome enough to actually make a video about it and explain that this brush, it draws this if you use some presets for like sharper curves, you can make very nice wrinkles or like creasings in your clothing or stylized hair on hard surface models. So very nice addition. It works by deforming the mesh from the original coordinates, unlike the draw brush. So very nice, super cool. Another brush. I'm gonna go quickly through this. So if you wanna see this, you can see the differential 5530. I think I'm gonna make it slightly bigger so you guys can copy later and read more about it. Remember, all of this information is public, so you can go and read it anytime, or you can go give it some love here like John Side did to Pablo. Then the other patch is actually a paper by Pixar that is implemented by Pablo in Blender. Now all of us, we have a little bit of Pixar in our Blender now. So basically it's a kind of deform brush that is physically correct. So it keeps the volume as it should, and it's awesome. So you can find here more information, the video and the actual paper by Pixar. You can see it. I think it was developed for Finding Dory. I think so. The name is regularized Kelvin sled brushes, or also called the elastic deform. And here you can find the when it was used. So they had this octopus in Finding Dory, and yeah, it's now part of Blender. So awesome. More, because that wasn't enough apparently. Let's see. The other tool that was added to sculpting is called mesh filtering. So it applies filters. I think if you have watched the live stream that I did maybe 4 episodes ago, I think, with Pablo Navarro, he was here together with Julian Casper, and we went through the updates, changes, improvements, the features that he coded in the sculpt branch, which now many of those are part of master, so it's 2.81. In this particular case, this mesh filter tool applies a number of actions, filters on the mesh. In this case is, for example, inflate. So when you click and drag, it would inflate the mesh. You can also constrain it to specific axis, in this case deform y, x, y, z. You can make it into a sphere. You can make it a random, so all the points are moved in random to add some random noise in sculpt mode. So if, for example, if you can quickly make a mask and then go to this tool and add some random noise to it. If you want to make maybe some fur, like a rag. So very neat. I think you get the idea. The filter type, I bet I bet this is just like the beginning, and it's gonna be it can be expanded in the future to have other kinds of filters to transform this mesh. Is everything okay going on in the chat? I think it's cool. I think nice. I don't have to make the window size so big anymore because I'm wearing glasses. Remember, if you think you see nice but just not so nice, it's because you need glasses. Once you get them, everything becomes full HD, quad HD. So recommended. I know many people know that already, but it's a nice thing to say. All right, thank you for the thumbs up, everybody. Matias Mendiola is okay. We're gonna show some of his work now on the grease pencil area, because he's an artist that now is also doing patches in Z. What? Pff. All right, continue with the last brush that was added by Pablo Navarro. Mask filter and dirty mask generator. So it's actually two operators. One of them, the mask filter, modifies the whole paint mask. So you make a mask, right? You make or black and white, that thing that looks black and white, that you're masking out a part of the mesh, and you can apply filtering, like making like shrinking or expanding the mask. Or you can also, I can show you a video. For example, in this case, you draw the mask, and then you can sharpen, you can make it like make it smaller, shrink it, expand it, and grow it, blur it, all those nice filters. So it's a tool now that you can control the masking much better. And the other tool is basically the dirty vertex colors, but it generates a paint mask. So it takes it's the same way that you use for the vertex paint, that takes the angle of the faces and then just adds some color in there. Not a min occlusion, but almost. Not a pointiness, but almost. But it makes like a mask out of it. So very nice. Dirty mask is the name. So all right, let's move on. I think that's it for sculpting. Sculpting was not part of the topics of this week, and then suddenly, boom, 4 more brushes. And I bet because of the feature freeze that comes next week, we are going to see the next episode also crammed with features. But that doesn't mean that there's no improvements in performance or in all the general bug fixes. But those new features are unrelated to those. The work on improvements on performance, it continues, and it's an ongoing project. It's just not a walk in the park to do it. Next, viewport cycles, Eevee, and shading, because there are also changes in the nodes. Let's try to cram those in. Viewport, the first and only. There is a new change, and that affects the workbench. The look dev, which is now gone, is no longer called look dev. It's been improved or upgraded into being the material preview, basically. And the look dev feature, the big one, which was being able to change the world of the world color, for example. Let's see if I can find the file. The one that allows you to change the let's see, Eevee, and let's try the spot here. The one that allowed you to change the HDRI, for example, it now works on cycles as well. So that is pretty great. So if you leave your mouse over, you're gonna find out that the look dev mode now is called material preview. So just a name change. The features in it, the option that allows you to change the scene lights, for example, is still there. Scene world, it's the same, that hasn't changed. Now there is a new feature for the strength, so you can control how strong is the HDR effect that applies on your look dev material preview. The great thing here is that now this feature works in render preview as well. So what does it mean? Well, when you're doing Eevee stuff, it doesn't really mean much because it's about the same. But when you're, hey, this looks pretty nice. Cool lighting. It means that if you're doing any kind of Well, I have a long list of meshes here because I have the add-on for extra mesh tools. So if you're using cycles here, you will find that the render preview now also lets you choose the HDRs and use them for lighting. So you can actually do the same kind of adjustments and try and test your shadings in your own HDRs. So that's a functionality that was added for Eevee, and now it's here for everyone. So that is very, very nice. In the look dev or material preview, you still use Eevee internally. So if you're doing cycle stuff, it will be like a material preview like it was in 2.7. So basically you can test your shaders, and for painting, for example, for doing bump maps, it's much faster because it uses your GPU, and it's accelerated, and it's Eevee, and it's awesome. Eevee under the hood. But when you do the actual render, you can see it now in cycles. So very nice. And remember that here you can add your own custom HDRs. So you can test your scenes, your shaders in your own setups. And the strength is also available for cycles. Nice. Am I being all like choppy now because of the CPU being eaten? No, it's all fine. All right. Now we can sleep happy. What's about that? Pablo, do we finally have the option to choose to display render only? No, it's not there yet. But it hasn't been really proposed any. How should it work? Is there a proposal? Would be that thing makes having proposals, having mockups, having the whole interaction. It helps a lot. And I think that's it. Area stretching overlay. Oh yeah, the stretching overlay, the one that shows for UVs, that shows if the UV is too stretched or the area, it's the texture, it looks good enough, it's not stretched. It now works for multiple objects, so that's pretty neat. But you know what is pretty neat? You know, when Cycles gets updates. Let's not forget the Path Tracer render engine in Blender. Have you ever had an issue with shadows where it looks like all dent and horrible and like little stairs on the edges? Like, for example, like this. Have you ever had that issue? Well, no more, because now, thanks to a paper that was implemented by that was presented at SIGGRAPH, and it was implemented by Lucas Stockner, and I think he implemented it the same day because the patch says this is an alternative to that was presented at SIGGRAPH today. So I remember seeing Lucas at SIGGRAPH, but I think he made the patch the same day. Well, now it's out in Cycles, so the you can actually see the if you are more into the actual math behind it or the actual implementation, you can see the actual paper by Yanning Carr Lee. And you can see here that was presented at SIGGRAPH 2019, and you can see a little bit more of this. So awesome, awesome, long-standing issue now. Pretty nice. Now gone. All right, next, Eevee. Eevee is the other render engine that also gets improvements and performance improvements and more like a refactor. The shadow maps, shadow buffers were they were there added for the first version of Eevee, but it could be a bit better. And there was a branch going on about the temp refactoring the whole shadow maps, and now it's part of the latest Blender. I don't have a picture now, but I think if you just it should work pretty much the same. The settings are pretty much the same. There are a few changes, but it's basically just nicer out of the box, and especially for soft shadows. You don't have to select to set it to soft shadows anymore, because they are like the actual shadow. You don't have to, because it's taking into account for you. But basically, good shadows. Next, the bump. Yes. bump improvements in Eevee to match cycles. So if you had any, if you will see like a obvious difference between Eevee bump and cycles, now that should be a lot less, should be a lot more similar. All right, next. Already 35 minutes past 5. Shading. There are the mapping node is now using dynamic inputs. So if you use shading and you add a mapping node, now this is also using dynamic inputs. So I think if you have seen the show in the last few weeks, I've been talking about how how these nodes now can have dynamic inputs, so not every option needs all of them, or if they have to be added dynamically by other nodes. For example, now this is allowed, and this is another node that is getting it. So it's a lot of work under the hood, and to make things nicer and to make things that don't make sense disappear or show up. So that's I think that was part of the Google Summer of Code, so more on that. The noise node that was added recently as well, there is now a multiple dimensions, and I think the other one, yes, the noise texture also has multiple dimensions, so now they match. This might break backward compatibility. So if you had a render that it has to look exactly the same, maybe you want to finish that animation with 2.80 before moving to 2.81, or just render the whole shot in 2.81. It's just that the noise won't look the same. Like if it would look like in one way, like black and white, now is white and black. So it's pretty much the same. Nobody's gonna tell, except if you render some frames in 2.80 and some frames in 2.81, but nobody in their sane mind will do that. That is all for shading, I think. Shading, Eevee, cycles. All right, time for another sip of tea, because I still have grease pencil, video sequencer, rigging, miscellaneous, and blah blah. Jeez, so much. Developers, please take a break. Grease pencil. Add support for polycurve to the convert to strokes operator. Last week I showed you that if you have I'm pressing the shortcut from 2.7 here, but the convert operator, it used to only work from curves to grease pencil. Now it also takes polycurves to only Bezier curves. Now it also takes polycurves into account. Then another feature that I mentioned before that was actually developed by a story artist, by Matias Mendiola. He did the story boards for Cosmos Laundromat, for Agent 327, and for Caminandes 3, and he's now coding. What the heck? Yes, he made this operator that sets the active object material based on the selected stroke. So you can, so it's more easily to change and set active materials based on whatever you're drawing. So very nice, yes. But don't stop making art, please. Making code is fun, but it's one way how they wrote that you get sucked into it and then you stop doing art. I know a friend that went through that. All right, another feature from Grease Pencil, it has to do with the fading of, for example, if you have a Grease Pencil object and you have a 3D object, there is an option that allows you to hide, to fade the other objects. So it's called here fade objects, and allows you to like focus only when you have that object selected. If you have other objects selected, then it's fine, then you should see your scene like it is. But if you have the Grease Pencil object, then everything will go away. It's a temporary overlay that applies when you're painting, when you're drawing, just so it makes things a bit a bit easier to read and a bit more easy to draw on. It's an overlay, so you can disable it anytime, but the new feature is actually related to apply this effect only to the active object and not to all the grease pencil objects. So it's a little button here, a little checkbox on the fade objects, and I think maybe this should be reworked in a way, because I think it should be the other way around, like only fade the active object and then one toggle for all the objects. I think maybe the boolean can be set different, because this is the same concept. I don't know if you've seen this feature, but it's the same concept as when you are in the pose mode, for example. If you're in pose mode of an armature, you can fade the geometry that is wow, this looks nice. I don't think this is expected to work like this. Anyway, the whole point of this feature is to fade once you have the bones selected in pose mode, is to fade the geometry, all the meshes behind it or around it or all the other ones, so you can actually focus on the bones, so it's easier to see the bones. But apparently there's something funky here going on, because in 0.5 is fine, but then 0 goes, the grease pencil disappears, and then 1, the meshes disappear. So this is a fun one. If your developers are watching this, check it out. All right, next, video sequence editor. So this is more of a not the actual video sequence editor, but an add-on, an amazing add-on that has been developed for a while now, for a very long while. Power Sequencer, okay, Blender Power Sequencer by Nathan, or GD Quest, known as GD Quest. He also makes amazing tutorials on YouTube, especially focused on gaming or like Godot. I learn a lot from the Godot tutorials that he's been making. Now this awesome add-on for editing, because he edits his videos in in the video sequence editor. So he made this add-on to make it easier to edit those videos, and now they are part of Blender. They come built in, you have to enable it, but it's like the node wrangler, you know, it adds more functionality to the node editor, and hopefully some of these features could be added to the video sequence editor one by one. It's good that everybody can see it now, are aware of this add-on, and then they can see, hey, maybe this feature can go into Blender, and eventually all of that can become into Blender. So next, rigging features. Rigging, yes, last few weeks we got a few improvements on the constraints on copy rotation, copy scale. If you are not aware of it and you're into rigging, check out the previous episodes. I think last week there were a few tricks to the constraints, and this week there is first one in the armature. It's not a constraint, but a modifier that allows to, here, I'm gonna give you the link so you can read more about it if you're into it, but basically adds inherit scale options to remove shear or average the scale. So before it used to be just a toggle to inherit the whole scale, but now there are actual options where you can go in and tweak it. You can fix the shear, average, known, or known legacy, which is the previous way of doing it, just a boolean, but this one gives you a lot more control to have that, to tweak the inherit of the scale. So if you want to read more, check out the differential D5588. Next, Alexander Gavrilov is on a roll with all that has to do with animation, rigging, constraints. He added this for drivers, support decomposing rotation into bending followed by twist. So the rotation, instead of just being just rotation, now it's decomposed into many more components, so more flexibility. As far as I know, I didn't have time to actually try it, so please, if you understand what I'm saying, all these words that I'm coming out by just reading this differential, check it out. It's in D5651. More. Copy rotation. The copy rotation now has mixing nodes, new mixing nodes for the constraint that is called copy rotation. So you can actually have replace, add. It used to be just replace. Now you can add before the original, after the original, or offset, which is the legacy mode. Then there is also a copy transform node that also has the blending modes. So copy transforms, you can have mixing for replacing before the original or after the original. More paste the link for rigging, please. I'm pasting paste the links. It's the developer.blender.org/d, and there is the here I'm gonna paste one of them, but just replace the last part of the differential by the number that I'm sharing it. So the copy transform now also got it, and the transform constraint got this feature here. Transform constraint here, transformation. Implement a mix mode option. So it's the same concept as before, allows selecting how the new location, rotation, scale is combined with the existing transformation. So here you can see again, mix, replace, or add for transformation. So having this looks like a huge improvement, because it changes how you mix one constraint with the other. This looks like a can of bugs waiting to be opened because it's having so many things can happen from there, right? So many variations of adding and replacing values. Remember that the constraints are like modifiers, so they depend. The order depends on each other. So the order changes the result that you get. So crazy math. I can only think of you know, that meme of the guy looking with the numbers here floating. All right, next, miscellaneous. These changes didn't fit in any category, but are worth mentioning. Okay, raise your hand if you missed the background images feature from Blender 2.7 and 6. One of the long-awaited features from that made it a bit hard to make the move was to be able to make the new object, the empty image. For example, here I'm dropping an image. This is just a screenshot of Blender, so it's very meta that what I'm showing here. Okay, people are raising their hands. So one of the features that was missing is the ability to make it show up only when you are aligned to the axis, to a view axis, like top, right, left, bottom. So now there is an option which will make it, will allow you to do that. Basically, you once it's active, it will disappear unless you are in the in a view that is aligned to like top, level, right, or left. How did he do that? What? The drag and dropping? Now you can drag and drop. You can drag and drop any image. So for example, here I can drag and drop and it appears, shows up. Drag and dropping, shows that. So people are raising their hands. Yes, they missed the old. There were so many limitations with the old background images. They were attached to the viewport. So it meant that if you load a blend file without the load UI, you will lose your, it would be lost. Also, the moving and the drawing and everything was like having duplicate code. It was hard to maintain. Now this is part of Blender, so it's part of Blender. It's a 3D object, so you can transform it with the same tools that you would transform anything else. You can draw it with the same code that you will draw any kind of image. So there are many benefits. More features. Yes, transform supports snap to children with affect patterns. So last week, if you remember, I shown the, oh, I'm all the way upside down here. So I show that now you can transform the patterns without transforming the children. Now this transformation supports snapping. So yay. Batch renaming. The batch rename, it got an improvement. Remember last week, the start of the show, or one of the starts of the show, was that now you can batch rename multiple objects or strips or nodes or anything at the same time. There was a feature that allows you to use regular expressions, and thanks to Yun Mitsutani, he made a patch where you can now use groups of regular expressions. So thank you, June. All right, and I'm almost done. I only have like 10 minutes for questions. Sorry. GLTF support for texture transform on any texture. Yeah, GLTF got improvements for textures and for exporting custom light ranges. So if your light has a different custom range, now it's also supported, and many more fixes. So try it. If you had issues, try it again. API changes, implement an operator callback for dynamic description. I had the link somewhere here, but basically there is a new option on the operators. If you're making add-ons, you might be interested in this. There is a new option that you can pass like a .arg, like an argument, and you can make it so the same operator has two different tooltips, for example. So if your operator changes depending on whatever action maybe it's the same operator for multiple actions, you can make it have different tooltips. So you don't have to put all the different ways to use your operator in just one tooltip. All right, and then the last one is Python API is a method for reordering constraints. So before it was only possible in the UI, now you can also do it with Python. So very nice. And I think I'm gonna cut it here because there is also improvements in the depth graph, but it's just under the hood stuff that is very important. It has to do with performance, but it's hard to show because it's so much work under the hood, and library linking and reading and tagging and all kinds of stuff. All right. Let's see. Let's go to the questions. All right. I will try to load the page again. Let's see. How many questions did you guys leave? Let's see. 89. All right. And I have 9 minutes. Pipeliner asks, hi Pablo, I have a good idea for a future event. As soon as everything nodes is there, someday in the future, hopefully, can you add a node? Can you do a node quest so people can join and create more nodes? Actually, that's a fun idea. Yeah. Also, a node quest is what people can join and create more nodes. Well, people have to be able to write in C, like C code, and the code has to be like good enough to like match the quality standard. So it's gonna be harder. It's not like contributing a matcap or HDR. It's gonna be a bit higher level, but will be actually pretty fun to get more people involved and also improve the documentation in making new nodes. All right, so let's next question. Hey Pablo, will the animation nodes implemented in Blender as a standard add-on? I think it deserves its place in Blender as a C4D Mocgraph alternative. Love the show, take care. Thank you very much. Animation nodes as a standard add-on. It is an add-on, it just doesn't come bundled with Blender because it's like 50 megabytes. It's like a quarter of Blender. It's pretty big. It definitely deserves a room in Blender, but with the Everything Nodes project, less of that add-on should be needed, and eventually, hopefully, it could be replaced or, you know, transform into something more powerful, even that breaks all the limitations from the Animation Nodes add-on. It's remember that the Animation Nodes add-on and the developers of Everything Nodes project, it's the same person. So that is being kept in mind. Penguin asks, bonjour, Pablo, bonjour. Bonjour. The circle select tool currently has a pretty bad radius hotkey. On top of that, it doesn't permanently change the radius. This is clunky, so it's more like a bug report, not an actual question. Any plans to change the radius of the circle select with a shortcut or make it permanent change? Seems much more intuitive. Circle select tool. On top of that, it doesn't change permanently. Yeah, I would mark it as like a like a paper cut maybe, because if it doesn't keep the memory, doesn't remember the radius of the tool, it sounds like a maybe not so hard to do or paper cut that a developer can contribute. Next question, Simon, is there any plan to make the huge lists of monocolor icons more readable? They look slick, but honestly they were a huge step back in terms of functionality. I can't even seem to find the right ones unless I literally look down the list one by one. Where is it? Where is that? Like the list of monocolor icons, but where? I agree, like color icons help, but in another way they also make everything a bit more noisy, more it's hard to see when everything has color, and they will be all fighting for the red color or like green, or maybe we can add more categories. So that I completely agree. Maybe like these columns, they could have different icons, different colors for each whatever they do. Yeah, I think we can just add more categories, but every icon having their own color can become a bit noisy. We've seen it, even like Inkscape is doing it, GIMP did it, and many industry standard tool apps already did it time ago, like Photoshop and stuff. But the trick would be to have custom. Everybody should make their own. All right, let's see. Well, Pablo looks like an anime villain. Why? What was that? Nani? All right, let's continue. Xtroid. Hello, Pablo. Thank you for these wonderful lives. Thank you for watching it. Just one question: when the modifiers issues will be fixed, especially the Boolean modifier and the issue with coplanar faces. In the meantime, how do I proceed in order to subtract one mesh from another with coplanar faces? In 2.7 it was easy, the carve solver worked fine. In 2.80 the carve was deleted and the B mesh is buggy. Please report the bug, and remember that there is a new Boolean branch being worked on, so there will be improvements on that. And here you can send me the link to the tracker. So many hearts, problem description, and Howard is working on it. So yes, it's being worked on. As you can see, the task is made by a developer and is assigned to the same developer. So he made it and assigned it to himself. So don't worry, it's being worked on, and this is really showing how much how important it is. So don't worry, it's gonna be worked on. All right, next. Could you tell us why dynamic paint is not showing vertex map in the viewport? I think you mean weight map. It's the dynamic paint has a regression from 2.7, which doesn't show weight paint changes. So if for people that are not familiar with it, dynamic paint is this awesome feature that it allows you very quickly to have a dynamic paint, to have, for example, a canvas, and then to have a mesh that acts as a brush. So you can actually paint, if you're in the color vertex, so you're looking at the vertex and you make, for example, let's make a particle system and let's use that as a brush. So let's use, instead of the mesh volume, let's use the particle system, and that will paint, and this should show here, should paint. Okay, now I can see it, but I didn't select the particle system. I don't know how to set it up. Why? I test. Okay, anyway, this should show and this should work. What is not working is maybe here the color flat. No. Strange, because I saw it working recently. What is not working actually is the weight paint mode preview, and that has to do with a deeper issue. One way of fixing it would be to simply add weight paint, right? Weight paint preview, basically, it's just that. However, it would be much better if there would be more generic way of displaying custom data. For example, the functions branch, the everything nodes, all the nodes could have their own could write attributes to the mesh, and that way you can visualize them with this new system. So we've been talking about it before here, and the solution could be to have a overlay that is basically custom data. So it could be face orientation, it could be anything really. Maybe it's a flip normals. No, it's not the flip normals. I don't know exactly, but it's strange. I've had it working the other day, so maybe I need to sleep. No, I don't. I only need tea. Yay! All right, next question. Yay! No, that's a reply. Next question. Hi Pablo. Any comments already? No chance I will be read. Hey, you are being read, and thank you, by the way, for being part of the Blender Cloud and a Silver Development Fund supporter. First question. Could you please ask developers to implement support vertex groups weight maps in shader graph? It will be super shader graph. It will be super handy in some procedural graphics. I know shader graph is a word in, I am trying to remember what is the equivalent in Blender. It's like the node editor. Could you please ask developers to implement support vertex groups? Will be super handy in some procedural. Yes, yeah, it probably has to do with that. That sounds like a everything nodes project. Yeah, make like a proposal, or a proposal, and see how it could work, how it could fit within Blender. It's always nice to see pictures, you know, how would it work? Is it a node? Is it a one node? Is it an attribute node? Is it many nodes for each? So yeah, that is nice to see it and actually see it in person. Not in person, almost in person. We can print it and see it in person. Second question by Damian. Could it be implemented to have some kind of offset for the noise maps when they use in conjunction with the displace modifier? Offset for the noise maps. Could you just do that with maybe with drivers and using different objects or different? Yeah, maybe it could be implemented as a feature, but I think it can be done possibly now. And again, if it's a displace modifier, then it fits into the modifier nodes, part of the everything nodes project. Arthur asks, how is your new laptop? I barely had any time to use it, but I've been actually, and on Twitter the other day, I shared how fast it was compiling Blender. That was crazy. In 3 minutes, okay, this looks very, but in 3 minutes, I compiled Blender from scratch. Like I've completely, I removed Blender, the folder. So yeah, it was in a bit over 3 minutes, it was compiling Blender. So I was very happy about that. Of course, this is a full compilation. So if you only change a few parts of Blender, you can, it will be so much faster. But it's funny to see how long it would take it before. I remember it used to take like 20 minutes or so. Question. There is actually 4 questions. All right. Could we have the render results taken out from all textures list? For example, a small switch button. That's a very, very good point. Yes. Yeah, it should be. Yes. Let's make a proposal. I don't think a small switch would be. I think it's a completely different list. Maybe it could be part of the image editor. The image editor and the render view should maybe be two different editors, like 2 different sections, so that way we can have a bit more, you know, more functionality added without making switches and stuff. Why are there only 8 render slots? Because but you can add more, I think, can't you? So if you render, so I think, yeah, you can add more. Look. go crazy with slots. How to select the active render slot? You can click on it, or select it here from the list, or no, that's pretty much it. Can render slot be used in the compositor? What I sometimes do is I render the most noisy part of an alpha channel. No, I think they're not available in the compositor as far as I know. It's always gonna be the render result, and is a render layer. No, that's the only thing you can choose. You can't choose the output of the render. You have to save your render somewhere. But yeah. All right, let's see. More. Hey Pablo, why don't UV tools have gizmos like the 3D one? Only the transform tool, and it's working well. The reason is time. So the tool system was added mainly as a proof of concept. Well, maybe like the goal was to improve the modeling tools and the whole tool system in Blender, like a new concept. Every editor could have this tool system, but there's only so much time. So the 3D viewport is the one that got most of the attention, especially for the modeling tools. Then and for painting, for sculpting, this was a huge amount of work, having all this system also for painting and texture painting and stuff. The UV editing was added last, like the last few weeks before the Blender 2.80 release. No weeks, but months. But yeah, there was not a lot of time left, especially you can see it in the VFX and the motion tracking. Actually, if you remember, before the 2.80 release, there was actually a tool system here, a toolbar on the clip editor, just so you can two things there, right? But it didn't there was no time to actually add the tools, so they were left. They were removed, brought back to the previous version and to how they looked previously, and it's just a matter of time. Really, it's just a matter of time. All right, 6 minutes past 6, and I started 5 minutes late, so let's do 5 more questions. It's only fair. Even though it's a bit late, but let's get to it. Cobra asks, hey Pablo, can we have Pablo's radial background color in master? The patch is no longer working for 2.81, and I keep asking him for an update. It would be nice to have it shipped with Blender. Well, he is the developer, really, and is now working for Blender, so I can apply this if you want the radial gradient in the background. It is unrelated to sculpt mode, so I didn't commit to the sculpt branch. The last comment is from April, and he's a nice guy. So, and he is now much more experienced with Blender code than he was in April. So maybe you can ask him again. I think he wouldn't mind, especially if this was asked in well, my face is here now. Especially if it was asked if this was in April, maybe he can get it to work now. But yeah, he coded it, so I bet he wouldn't mind to give it a try, or at least have a reason why not. Maybe the mesh system, but this sounds like something he could do while he's sleeping, having a siesta. All right, the dragon. Question number 4 is, will the face orientation color get an option to change this? This is also coming on every week. And when will Blender get an option to make a proxy of a mesh for animation? Proxy of the mesh for animation. I don't know exactly how this would work, like proxy of an armature or a mesh. You can make a proxy mesh and then apply animation on top. I'm not getting it. I think would be just easier by adding an armature and just do a proxy of an armature. And the question about the face orientation has been asked multiple times. Just needs developer support. Is there any developer out there that it maybe wants to look into it? I think being able to change the face orientation color, it wouldn't hurt anybody. So it could be part of the design. It wouldn't mess anything. So make a proposal so we can see it better, pictures. All right. Shingis ask, "Hola Pablo, thank you for your streams. What about UDIM support? We were hype about this feature and the feature will make it to 2.81, but a couple of days ago it got marked as a milestone for 2.82. So yes, being the fact that this Friday is the deadline, and well, I can only say that if it was marked as a milestone for 2.82, it means that the developer working on it, it didn't have time for it. It's yeah, apparently it's not that easy because he was actually working on it for months already, and then yeah, if that's sad, but that happens, you know. Sometimes yeah, sometimes there's not so much time for it, unfortunately. Sometimes features look like they work fine, but if you try all the, like, Blender is a huge program, right? So maybe it works fine for Eevee, but not for the Workbench or cycles, or not for... There can be issues, and if they can't be tackled on time, it's much more important to have a consistent release schedule. Like, okay, if we can't make it on Friday, then let's just not do it. Let's just not add that one feature and have a release, which 2.81 is already huge fixes in new features. It's like 2.80, but out of actually out of beta. It's a lot more stable and a lot more feature complete than 2.80. So if Udin can't make it, I think it's just smart to leave it to the next release. Dead Dragon, if you want a custom title bar header, why not use the source code from Epic Games and Unreal Engine? It's open source. Yeah, it's I don't think it works like that, like a copy-paste code. They're just so different, right? I think they don't use OpenGL for drawing the windows and buttons and stuff. All right, let's how many questions? Okay, let's do 2 more. Also, any news on the asset manager? No news on the asset manager, unfortunately. The developer working on that was looking into library linking because it's also related to the undo, the speed of the undo. So the developer that was assigned to work on the asset manager is now working also on making undo faster, which is something that is super high priority right now, much more than the asset manager. I know, again, it's been talked about, but again, priorities. All right. And last question by Elliot Gascoigne. Hi Pablo, diehard Blender fan here. Yes, hey, transferring from Maya and haven't looked back since. Anyway, my question is there any plans to implement network rendering again, like in 2.7, for render farms that have no internet access? This add-on was in 2.7, but basically because the API didn't change in 2.7 for so long, it was still working. But no other developer really jumped in and worked in making it, updating it for 2.8. So I think it's just a matter of updating it and maintaining it. Every feature that gets added to Blender, any add-on, anything, has to have a maintainer behind it, like to support it in case of bugs, fixes. Otherwise, we're just adding way more work into the current developers' shoulders. So it's not fair. If this add-on, if the developer of this add-on was to fix it and make it work in 2.8, I bet it will be part of it. It would be received just as it was in 2.7. What you can do for the time being is, well, if you're a bit tech savvy, is to use Flamenco, which is the render manager that we use here on the Blender Studio. It's open source. It's very easy to use it if you have a Blender Cloud subscription, but of course that uses internet. So if you don't have internet and you have a local network, you can install everything locally and use it. It's open source, but of course it takes a bit much more work to set it up. But once you have it, it should be totally possible. All right, way past the time. Let's call it a day, because I have to do the live stream in Spanish still in less than an hour. So yes, it's gonna be tough. Pucho says, let's get to 400 likes. Ah, thank you. Yes, actually the likes count actually helps a lot to get to spread the word. So please do it. You missed it, Isiak. Too bad. Hey, no, let's get it. Let's do it again next week. However, there's something I have to tell you about next week is that I don't know, I might travel. I might be in Madrid for one. I have to see for how long, but basically that means that the live streams, I might not be able to do them again at 5. So I will try to squeeze it in later at night. Sometimes like I did it before, like 4 hours later. I will try to do it at around that time. So we go back to the. Also, I won't be doing it from here because I will be in Madrid, but I still have to sort those things out. But if I do it, we might have a little bit of a vintage vibe because I might be late at night and might bring my beer back and chill like we used to in the old days for a few weeks. And then I'm going to come back here for, of course, continue doing it in the Blender Animation Studio like we always do. But I don't want to stop doing these videos because it's super fun. It's engaging with the community. It's awesome. Everybody's so nice. So and developers keep adding features. So let's get to our business. Yes, you know it. If you have watched Blender.Today, you know it. If you haven't watched and this is the first time that you have watched, if it is the first time that you watched Blender.Today, please leave a comment. I want to know how many people are actually watching it for the first time, because there are many like jokes that I do that maybe apply to only people that have watched it for 76 episodes so far, over 1.5 years. So let's get to it. If you're wearing headphones, watch out because it's gonna blow your ear holes. In 5, 4, we're gonna go with style. 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you everybody. I had a great time. I hope you too. Let's try and meet next week. Stay tuned on Twitter for updates on the one's the time, and also here on the YouTube channel to see when it's gonna happen and set a reminder. I will see you again next time. Next week, we'll see the time, but with the same awesomeness. Ciao. Gracias.